Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun. Dave Hooker is off today. It is the holidays. Apologies for being off last week. We took a much needed 4-day break over the Christmas holidays. I hope you guys all had a great Christmas. I'm sure for many of you, if you're a Tennessee fan, I hope your Christmas on the personal front with your family and everything was much better than your Christmas as a fan of the Vols, because it was a brutal weekend for Tennessee. As you guys know, they took a major hit in the transfer portal. We're going to cover that, by the way. We're also going to cover Tennessee players who have entered the NFL draft. Some not a shock, some a bit of a shock. We're actually going to break those down. We're going to ask the question if Tennessee's fallen behind in NIL, because truth be told, that could be a big reason for some of these issues that are happening right now. This day in Tennessee sports history, the stat of the day, we're going to break down major flaws with NIL and the transfer portal, and things that people should have seen coming and probably did, and maybe some things that the NCAA warned us about, but it is still their fault that it is this way. We're going to talk about all of that and ways to possibly fix it. This did not leave Tennessee basketball immune from this. We are going to discuss, because we were off when it happened last week, Cameron Carr entering the transfer portal. We're going to break down Tennessee basketball's depth. Are they deep enough now to win a national title, even though they're still number one? And we are going to close talking a little bit about the college football playoff, including breaking down each of the games by excitement, but also just if it's worth it, because since I last spoke to you guys, I've been proven even more right with my opposition to expanding the college football playoff, because the TV ratings were a disaster for the first round. We're going to get into that a little bit later. So it was an absolute crazy week. This is college football now, guys. This is how it works. You know, everybody else wants to be off the week of Christmas, relax, not cover a lot. And then the biggest news in the world happens in the college football universe over the week of Christmas and over the week of New Year's. That's just how things go. So you try to take a break and it just doesn't work. And that's how life is now. So let's go ahead and get going by talking about Tennessee in the transfer portal. And it's brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Go to chatmortgage.com, chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. All right, let's get started. Tennessee football, after the transfer portal window closed Saturday night, ended up losing 15 players to the portal overall. They lost wide receiver Nate Spillman, running back Khalifa Keith, wide receiver Nathan Leacock, center Vyson Lane, quarterback Gaston Bohr, receiver Caleb Webb, cornerback Jordan Matthews, running back Cam Selden, receiver Chaz Nimrod, defensive end Jason Jenkins, tight end Holden Stays, star Christian Harrison, linebacker Jalen Smith, receiver Squirrel White, receiver Mike Matthews. A lot of these were not big stories. A lot of these are players you expected to hit the portal, and so people weren't panicking until this weekend happened. So what happened on this weekend, and that's what we're going to talk about specifically. Over the weekend, Holden Stays entered the portal. I don't think that was worth panicking over. He came to Tennessee to be a number one tight end. Miles Kitselman and Ethan Davis were beating him out. So it makes sense for him to hit the portal. Squirrel White and Mike Matthews hitting the portal, though, really stood out. The reason those were big stories is because as Squirrel White was hitting the portal, news was surrounding Boo Carter, that he might hit the portal. And within an hour of Squirrel White hitting the portal, Boo Carter sent out a tweet saying he's staying at Tennessee, announcing his inking with the Volunteer Club. This is where we are in NIL now, because we were all wondering, why does Boo Carter need to announce he's staying at Tennessee? Nobody thought he was leaving. He wasn't in the portal. People were concerned about it, but that's not something you announce unless you've actually left and come back. Well, those things might be connected. And the same with wide receiver Mike Matthews entering the portal the next day. And I want you guys to read a column I wrote about this on Off the Hook Sports on Sunday. And the question is this: did Boo Carter's return push Mike Matthews and Squirrel White into the transfer portal? Because, guys, I think it's highly possible it did. Now, stay with me on how this worked out, and I'm going to break down how this could have been the possibility. So, remember, Boo Carter was not in the transfer portal. It wasn't announced, anything like that. However, he still announced his return to the Vols on his Twitter account Friday night as part of an NIL partnership with the Volunteer Club. Now, barely an hour before that decision, Squirrel White announced he was entering the portal, or Hayes Fawcett of On3 announced or on 3, excuse me, announced Squirrel White was entering the portal. And just after midnight Sunday, Hayes Fawcett reported on X that Mike Matthews was entering the portal. So how did this all play out? Well, before Boo Carter announced his return, on Friday, Chattanooga Times Free Press reporter Stephen Hargis, who covered Carter's recruitment, said on X that Carter was discussing his role with the Vols more than NIL money. He was more focused on his role with the Vols than he was NIL money before revealing that he wouldn't enter the portal. On 3 reported that role involved playing more offense. So, based on reports, Friday morning, Boo Carter was talking to the Tennessee coaches and effectively saying, who, by the way, Boo Carter starts at effectively nickel for Tennessee, which is probably why Christian Harrison entered the portal. And he was speaking with the coaches and saying, I want to play more on offense. I want more of an offensive role. He's looking for a Travis Hunter type role with the Vols. If he were to play offense, he would obviously play receiver. He would probably play slot receiver. And truth be told, as a punt returner, if you watched him last year, he is deadly with the ball in his hand. So I understand why there could be an allure of him playing slot receiver at 5'11", 195 pounds. But that was all happening Friday morning. Well, within an hour of each other, Squirrel White, who is currently the starting slot receiver at Tennessee and had a disappointing year because of injury, enters the portal, and Boo Carter announces he's staying. Guys, those have to be directly connected. I mean, Squirrel White would have been Tennessee's feature slot receiver next year, but if Boo Carter is going to get the role on offense, and if he's negotiating with Tennessee, and by the way, this is probably, it seems like how Tennessee landed him in the first place, which is why he was entertaining Colorado. It sounds like by making those promises to Boo Carter to play more in the slot, Squirrel White saw his reps were going to decrease, so he decided to enter the portal before the window closed. The next day, Mike Matthews entered the portal. Now, this one's a little bit weirder. Mike Matthews is a wideout, not a slot receiver. We've seen that wideouts can be the leading receiver and 1,000-yard receivers in Josh Heupel's system. See Cedric Tillman in 2021, even though Jalen Hyatt, the slot receiver, was the leading receiver in 2022 and won the Bolitnikoff Award. So it can go both ways. My read into that is that Boo Carter wasn't just told he'd be the slot guy, which would push Squirrel White out. He was told he'd be the go-to guy next year, which probably pushed Mike Matthews out because Tennessee probably got Mike Matthews on the promise that he would be the go-to guy after Brew McCoy left. And I've told you guys, Mike Matthews is a rare talent. I'm not so sure how much it was worth it for Tennessee, but it seems like they had some sacrifices to make, and they leveraged the future of the Vols under, they would rather hitch it to Boo Carter than they would Mike Matthews or Squirrel White. That seems like exactly how it went down. And the truth of the matter is, I don't know how smart of a move that was. I got to be honest. I don't know if, one, playing both sides for Tennessee, if their offense is humming, is a lot harder than playing for Colorado. They run a lot of tempo. It can be tiresome. I'm not so sure Boo Carter could play both sides. Two, and more importantly, I mean, guys, would you rather replace Boo Carter at star or Mike Matthews at wideout? Now, maybe Josh Heupel thinks he can get more wideouts, but as of right now, Tennessee is shorthanded on wideouts, okay? Because with Nate Spillman in the portal now, the only scholarship receivers they have right now, as we speak, are Braylon Staley and Chris Brazzell. Now, Chris Brazzell showed some promise as a wideout this year, so he could be good. Because remember, guys, don't forget, Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, Nathan Leacock, Nate Spillman are all in the portal. Dante Thornton and Brew McCoy are out of eligibility. Dante Thornton's into the NFL draft. Brew McCoy's out of eligibility. Now, Tennessee does have 3 receivers committed for this year. Joaquin Dotson, Rodarius Jackson, and Travis Smith Jr., all 2025 commitments. But if they're keeping their promise to Boo Carter, then the only thing we could honestly safely say at this point, if my theory is correct, is all they have next year to go to with receiver is Chris Brazzell and Boo Carter. Chris Brazzell is the wideout, Boo Carter in the slot. They need a lot more help with that because Braylon Staley can't play at the wideout spot, guys. He's a slot receiver. Now, that could involve Dotson, Jackson, or Smith, one of the 3 recruits, becoming the other wideout on the outside. But I think they're going to have to do some work in the transfer portal. There are some available transfers now, and they're going to have to lure some of them to Rocky Top if they're going to continue to be successful, because that's the only thing that makes sense is that Boo Carter is going to be seeing a lot of reps and a lot of action next year on offense, which is what pushed Squirrel White and Mike Matthews into the portal. The other possibility, and we'll talk about this later in the week, I wrote a column on it, is whether or not Josh Heupel's scheme is turning receivers away. Maybe it's not the desirable place for receivers that it used to be. But I got to be honest, my guess is more that they made some promises to Boo Carter that involve getting him the ball a lot on offense, and that pushed Squirrel White out because Squirrel White wants that he would be the slot guy in place of Squirrel White, and it pushed Mike Matthews out because Mike Matthews thinks it's going to mess with his touches. I want to get y'all's thoughts on that, but before we move on, remember the show represented by Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
All right, so the question is this, did Tennessee make a mistake? Well, here's two questions. One, did Tennessee make promises to Boo Carter that forced Mike Matthews and Squirrel White into the transfer portal? And two, if they did, was that a mistake? Should they not have made those promises? This is very debatable. And by the way, the other question is Tennessee running out of NIL money, which we're going to talk about too later, because maybe they just don't have the money to keep everybody right now. However, I think the most likely scenario is they're going to try to use Boo Carter a lot next year. I think their focus is going to be turning Boo Carter into an All-American on both sides of the ball, making him a Heisman candidate and making him the next Travis Hunter. I also think it's possible Josh Heupel knows, and you can see this with Jalen Hyde and the NFL guys, by the way, who's not a good receiver. Josh Heupel is making a determination that he could be making a determination that he wants to use his NIL funds to, rather than shore up and dominate at receiver, to shore up his offensive line and his defensive line where he's losing a lot of guys, and then figure that his system's good enough that he can just find track stars at receiver and plug them in. And with Nico Iamaleava developing next year, they can make those passes. The offense will be fine, even though it's struggled for 2 years. SC Scout Guy goes, if they did make promises, how did anyone find out? Well, just so you know, with local news reporters and people like that, receivers talk. I'll just say that. Or players talk, and reporters have sources. And the Chattanooga Times Free Press reporter I mentioned to you guys, Stephen Hargis, who's on our show actually last year, he's been on top of the Boo Carter coverage from the start. He's close with Boo Carter's family. He's the one who told us that Boo Carter was not going to flip to Colorado. And we had him as our main source. So we stuck our necks out last year and said Boo Carter's not flipping when everybody thought he was flipping. And we guaranteed you he wasn't flipping. Well, we were right on that. And we got it thanks to Stephen Hargis. He's very close with the family. He knows a lot of what's going on with Boo Carter. And Boo Carter was recruited with the promise that he could, not the promise, but with the idea that he could play both sides. That's what he was looking at in the moment. So when the report comes out that he's talking to the coaches, that's what that's about. It wasn't as much about NIL. Now, the NIL side, that doesn't mean he wasn't negotiating with NIL and negotiating some contracts that involved him playing both sides, which is how it could lead to On3, which has been at the forefront of covering NIL connections. I know this is a lot to get to, but the long, short end of the stick is this. Boo Carter and his negotiations, the parties he's negotiating with, and I mean the NIL parties, have connections to On3. He has connections to the Chattanooga Times Free Press and their reporters, as his family does. That's how this gets out of what he's negotiating. So right now, I'll say this, guys. If Boo Carter and Chris Brazzell are healthy, that's a good 1-2 punch at receiver next year. And Josh Heupel's system, when it's at its best, uses 3 receivers. You have a go-to wideout, a slot guy who's deadly, and then a number 2 receiver on the other side, a number 2 wideout. The 2 years the offense was at its peak, 2021 and 2022. In 2021, the go-to wideout was Cedric Tillman. The slot receiver was Velus Jones Jr. The number 2 go-to wideout was Javonte Payton. That was it. That's who they threw it to. Those were the only players that mattered for most of the year. In 2022, it was a little bit different because Cedric Tillman went down with an injury. However, they had Brew McCoy. So Brew McCoy was the go-to wideout. Ramel Keaton was the number 2 wideout on the opposite side, and Jalen Hyatt was the slot receiver. And obviously, Jalen Hyatt became a Biletnikoff Award winner. So the truth of the matter is, I think Boo Carter could play in the slot like a Jalen Hyatt or Squirrel White. And guys, honestly, he could be better than them. He is really, really, really good with the ball in his hands. Look at him on punt returns, guys. He's an elite athlete. And I don't think the coaches were too hesitant to promise him more reps on offense. Let me just say that. And particularly with Squirrel White this year struggling. Now, people are talking about Kelsey Pope and the issues at receiver. Guys, don't forget that just 2 years ago, Kelsey Pope coached a Biletnikoff winner. When he was an off-field analyst, he was tasked with developing Cedric Tillman, and he turned Tillman into a 1,000-yard receiver. And then in 2023, Joe Milton was throwing the ball. This past year, I think the rotation, because of promises made, Heupel forced guys out there who shouldn't have been out there. Brew McCoy never should have come back. Was just never himself. Lost a major step, and it just wasn't the same. Squirrel White was banged up in the slot. And also, more importantly, Tennessee wasn't able to get the ball to those receivers a lot of time because Nico Iamaleava was under duress. There's a lot of issues in those at receiver this year. Now, Derek says open space and running routes are 2 different things. You're right, Derek, but truth be told, in this system, in the slot, if it's working the way it needs to, there's not a lot of route running talent required in the slot. Jalen Hyatt was an open space guy. Okay, he wasn't a route runner. Okay, he was a vertical guy. It'll remind, think about it this way. And Dave always brings this up, but it works because he did this in Tennessee's system in 90 and 91, and then he did it for the Cowboys. Alvin Harper wasn't a route runner. He was a vertical straight line guy, and he was the speed guy to open up for the other receivers on the other side, whether that be Carl Pickens in college or Michael Irvin in the NFL. So I get there were issues at receiver this year. I don't know if it is on Kelsey Pope, but I got to say, I think there were some other major problems facing the program. And I get it's panic time if you're Tennessee to a degree, losing Mike Matthews. But again, Chris Brazzell and Boo Carter could be a good 1-2 tandem. And I genuinely, honestly think that could work out, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Steven asked if I see staff changes coming soon at Tennessee. No, I don't. But guys, again, let's wait and see. We're going to have to see what happens in the transfer portal because there are a lot of guys available. And heck, Matthews could come back. We don't know yet, but we'll just have to see. Portions of the program are brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. www.cityheatandair.com. www.cityheatandair.com. Let's talk about some other players Tennessee lost. This time in the NFL draft. Over the weekend, 3 different Vols dating back to last Thursday have declared for the NFL draft. One of them, I didn't even think had any eligibility left. So that's what threw me off. That one was obviously Dante Thornton. Dante Thornton was a freshman in 2021. He's played fully all 4 years. So I was actually kind of shocked that he had to announce he was declared for the NFL draft, but he did. After Dante Thornton, Dylan, the big one, the big story, the best player of the year in the SEC, the one who couldn't really play in the college football playoff game because of injury, Dylan Sampson. He announced that he was leaving for the NFL draft. Again, understandable. Running backs, you got to go get your money when you can get your money. And then John Campbell Jr. announced that he was going to enter the NFL draft. Again, not really a shock. John Campbell Jr. has been in college since 2018. So 8, 9, 0, 1, 2. Like he's already been in college for 7 years. So I don't know how in the world he would have even had any eligibility if you already got a medical red shirt to begin with, plus the COVID year, plus an actual red shirt. So it's like John Campbell Jr., I don't think he had any left. So the big story was Dylan Sampson leaving. And obviously, as we can predict, James Pierce Jr. is probably going to be gone too. He hasn't officially announced as we are doing this show at 10:20 a.m. on December 30th, Monday morning. But I think we can all pretty much guess that James Pierce Jr. is going to go to the NFL. He just hasn't officially announced yet. So what does this all mean for Tennessee? Who are their biggest losses on this? Well, John Campbell Jr. unsurprisingly leaving for the NFL, which again is totally unsurprising, does open up Tennessee with a lot of work to do at offensive tackle because Javonte Spraggins is gone, Cooper Mays is gone, and John Campbell Jr. is gone. And, Andre Carrick, I believe, is fighting to be able to return for another year with the medical red shirt. I think he's probably going to get that, but we don't know yet. But basically, Tennessee has a lot of work to do. Their biggest focus is on the right guard position, which is what Wendell Moe should be able to replace if Andre Carrick is able to return, and center with William Satterwhite, but they got to go find a tackle. They have to go find a tackle, and David Sanders Jr. is a 5-star. Maybe they could plug him in. Maybe he's a plug-and-play 5-star. He is the Vols' biggest recruit, biggest signee since Eric Berry. So he could be a plug-and-play 5-star. At the same time, that puts them thin on the offensive line again, with Lance Hurd coming back too. And they probably need to go the transfer portal route to find a little bit more help to have a decent rotation. They're not as much in a panic on the offensive line, though, if David Sanders can work out. They have bodies. They have quality bodies. Again, with Wendell Moe coming, if Andre Carrick can get that extra year of eligibility, all of a sudden you see Wendell Moe, a proven starter. Andre Carrick, a proven starter now. Lance Hurd, a developing but getting better starter who was much better towards the end of the year. David Sanders, a 5-star, even though he's a true freshman. He seems like one of those rare talents that you could just plug in. And then William Satterwhite would be the biggest question at center, replacing Cooper Mays, who is one of the best offensive linemen Tennessee football has ever had. So that addresses the question on the offensive line. Dante Thornton gone. We just addressed the issues at receiver. So Dante Thornton gone. That's kind of one that we could tell you up front that Tennessee's got a lot of work to do at receiver. On the other side, I would say that James Pierce leaving. Tennessee doesn't have a lot of work to do on the edges. Jordan Ross is going to be a superstar himself, and Joshua Joseph is returning. So Tennessee has plenty of talent on the edge. The interior becomes a question. Tennessee's going to have to do a lot of work on the interior to shore up their defensive line because they're losing Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, Jackson Moy, Elijah Simmons. All these guys are gone, by the way. So with that in mind, Tennessee is going to have to shore up the interior. Running back. Dylan Sampson. I stand corrected. I have been eating crow all year, and I will eat crow again. I said at the beginning of last year that I thought midway through the season, Peyton Lewis would surpass Dylan Sampson as the starting running back because I didn't believe in Dylan Sampson as a pass blocker, and I thought Peyton Lewis was a rare talent. Well, both are wrong. Peyton Lewis, when he got his shot, which was at the end of the year, particularly against Ohio State, wasn't the special running back that Dylan Sampson is. It was proven not to be. I think partially this is because Joey Halsley abandoned the run game, but he still wasn't that special of a running back. And Dylan Sampson was one of the most special running backs in Tennessee history. I'm not going to say most talented, but certainly had the greatest season in Tennessee history as a running back if you just go based on productivity. What does Tennessee do at running back with Dylan Sampson predictably entering the NFL draft? Now, I thought NIL money could outweigh, Tennessee could throw enough NIL money at Sampson to have him return, and that could outweigh the NFL money because running backs can go a little bit later and don't get the money they want. But at the same time, running backs can get their money, and if you go early, you can hold out early and get your big contract. So I get why Dylan Sampson did what he did. Game to Window calls me out, said I said Dylan was lazy. I did. I was wrong. I owe him an apology. I was dead wrong. I thought his pass blocking issues were a major issue. But you know what? I was wrong. And I'll take the L on that. So where does Tennessee go at running back? Because as we know, Khalifa Keith has entered the portal and Cam Seldon has entered the portal. So at this point, Peyton Lewis is the only, and Deshaun Bishop are the only scholarship backs. All right, guys, I'm going to say this up front. Deshaun Bishop, I think, got more carries this year. Peyton Lewis is the better back. Lewis is the better running back. Tennessee is going to have to get him to turn into a very special back if they're going to keep this offense going. I think he can. He showed some promise, and he showed a lot of physical toughness. If he can improve his vision, I think Peyton Lewis, and it's not like Cam Seldon who had the worst vision in the world. I think Peyton Lewis can be elite next year with another offseason. Remember, guys, he was hurt at the start of the year. That delayed all of his development. When you're hurt for the first month of a season, it delays your development the entire year. So I do think Peyton Lewis can get it going. If he doesn't, Tennessee has, to their credit, recruited decently at running back to this point. They have coming in the class of 2025, they flipped USC running back Dwayne Morris out of Murfreesboro. He's an all-purpose back who they love, and USC really wanted him. That was a really big pickup. And they also got Georgia running back Justin Baker. So they have options at running back this year. So I think if Dylan Sampson ends up if Peyton Lewis ends up not working out, I think they will have options. I'm still thinking next year Peyton Lewis is going to be their feature back. They're going to be giving him the ball a lot. And I think when that happens, I think that it will be what allows the offense to go. I'm not expecting him to have the year Dylan Sampson had this past year. I am expecting Nico to have a much better year, so that could offset it. But, we'll have to see how that plays out. A lot of what happened this year is not Nico's fault. But I do think that Peyton Lewis, the pressure's on him now. I think that Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel have to make Peyton Lewis become a feature player, have to make him become the heart of this offense. They really did a good job of that this past year with Dylan Sampson. But with Dylan Sampson gone, Peyton Lewis needs to step up. That is one of their biggest issues right now is they have to find a running. They can't just have a serviceable running game. Not in this system anymore. I'm not saying I've ruled out this system altogether, although Jeff Levy's struggling, Lincoln Riley's struggling. There's a lot of reasons to question it. What I am ruling out is that this system can work without a running back that's the heart and soul of it. Because you're seeing this in the NFL now too. Teams have gone so nickel heavy on defense to stop passing games that running games are getting more and more dominant. That's why I still, guys, believe it or not, have the Ravens as my pick to win the Super Bowl, because the Ravens have a dominant rushing offense, and I don't think anybody in the playoffs is equipped to stop it with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. It's why I question whether Lamar Jackson has the best stats in the NFL. I'm not so sure he deserves another MVP because I think Derrick Henry's doing a lot to turn those stats into the best stats in the NFL. So with that in mind, I think Tennessee's the same way in college. I think a lot of teams play that bare 3-3-5 coverage. They soften it up. They're already built with the extra nickels. So this isn't just a Dylan Sampson thing. Going forward, Tennessee's going to have to be even more run-oriented than Josh Heupel ever wanted to be, and that Nico Iamaleava expected to be when he took over at Tennessee. And that means that Peyton Lewis has to step up and be the physical back that people need him to be. Because if Peyton Lewis can't do that, then Tennessee needs to hope one of their freshmen does, Dwayne Morris, Justin Baker, or they got to find somebody in the portal. Deshaun Bishop is a change of pace running back, guys. I'm sorry he can't be a feature back. I love how hard he works. I love how hard he plays. He's just, in many ways, not physical enough to do what's needed to be done. So it comes to Peyton Lewis, but yes, Dylan Sampson entering the draft, a blow to Tennessee, but an expected one. So they should be prepared for that if the coaching staff does what it's supposed to do. Portions of the program. Well, before we get going on that, I actually want to add a little bit more on this issue. But first, portions of the program brought to you by Medicare Misty.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, welcome back. So what do you guys think is more likely? Peyton Lewis emerges, they get a player from the transfer portal who's a star running back, or one of the freshmen emerges? My money is on, with Dylan Sampson entering the NFL draft, my money is on Peyton Lewis emerging as a star running back for Tennessee. I think Tennessee will be able to get a lot more out of Peyton Lewis. And just pulling up the stats real quick this year, Peyton Lewis this year, again, he missed the first part of the season, which is why you saw Deshaun Bishop get more carries. But Peyton Lewis finished the season with 64 carries for 339 yards. That's nearly 5.5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. He had 4 catches for 14 yards. So Peyton Lewis is probably the guy they're going to go with. He in case you're wondering with his size, stands at 6'1", 210 pounds. Deshaun Bishop, for context, had 74 carries for 455 yards, over 6 yards a carry. But remember, Deshaun Bishop got more carries at the beginning of the year when Tennessee was playing those awful teams in Kent State and Chattanooga and NC State. So you can't really use the same stat line for them. Peyton Lewis, it seemed like, was taking more reps and carries during SEC play. So with that in mind, I do think Peyton Lewis can become a superstar for Tennessee next year. Answering a couple of questions real quick. But Steven asked, do I think Tennessee needs a more aggressive offensive scheme? I think they need to stay more patient, Steven, and play a little more physical. Again, I'm not being old. I'm not trying to be old school. Everybody talks war daddies, SEC play, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, all of that. But college football is going back to that because defenses are playing so soft now. So I would say that Tennessee needs to stick with fine-tuning their run game. And that is where, again, that's where Peyton Lewis comes into play. You are starting to enter an era where running backs, once again, can be rare stars. I just told you guys, if my pick in the NFL is true, I would make the case that Derrick Henry could end up being the most significant offseason running back signing in NFL history. Yeah, no, I said that. The most significant offseason running back signing in NFL history. If the Ravens are to do what I think they're going to go do and go win the Super Bowl. If he's not the most significant offseason signing in NFL history, well, then, Saquon Barkley would be the most significant offseason running back signing in NFL history. And he is a 2,000-yard rusher now with the Eagles. So the truth be told, you are seeing a total resurgence of running backs, guys, a total renaissance of running backs. And you're seeing it in the NFL, and it's coming down to college right now. And with that in mind, I firmly believe that Tennessee is going to spend the entire offseason turning Peyton Lewis into a star. Because if you can do it with Dylan Sampson, I do think actually Peyton Lewis has more raw talent than Dylan Sampson. Not as fast, but he's good in so many other ways. So watch out for that. Watch out for Peyton Lewis. Game No Bueno says, LOL to Titans. Yes, I'm still mad we let Derrick Henry walk. But I will say that I gave the Titans credit yesterday. That was a masterful tank. Thank God for the tank. Portions of the program are brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, hemphousechat.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's right, HOOKED for 10% off. When we come back, we're going to talk about the real reason Tennessee may be losing a lot of this talent, guys. And it may not be good news. Are they losing talent because they're falling behind in the NIL game? Not something people want to talk about, but it could be the case. Stick with us. 2 minutes. We'll break that down.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we're still trying to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun on this New Year's Eve is what we're saying here. So we've got a little more to talk about with college football, and it's something Tennessee fans may not want to hear. But is Tennessee losing out on players because their NIL fund has dried up? Is that why players are leaving the portal? Is that why some may be entering the NFL draft? It is a weird question to ask because I thought NIL was going to be the great neutralizer for a program like Tennessee's that doesn't have the best talent inside its state and oftentimes has to go out to get talent. I thought NIL would be the great equalizer, but it's looking like NIL could become an issue or is becoming an issue with Tennessee. So I want to give you some reports real quick on this, guys, because this may not be something you want to hear, but On3 reported 2 years ago that Spire Sports had the largest NIL collective. Then it reported this past year that Tennessee's collective was number 2. If you guys don't remember, Tennessee went to declared open war on the NCAA over NIL issues back in January with the Niwa Yamaliava lawsuit, which basically effectively killed any regulations on NIL. Well, then we have what happened this year, and Tennessee may have nuked itself. Brad Crawford of 247 Sports reported earlier this month, back in December 10th, NIL collective funding rankings. And Tennessee was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Tennessee was down at number 15 at 11.6 million spent. Texas was number 1 at 22.2 million. Ohio State was number 2 at 20.2 million. LSU number 3 at 20.1 million. Georgia number 4 at 18.3 million. Texas A&M number 5 at 17.2 million. Michigan number 6 at 16.3 million. Alabama number 7 at 15.9 million. Florida number 8 at 15.9 million. Clemson number 9 at 15.2 million. Oklahoma number 10 at 14.8 million. Penn State number 11 at 13.79 million. Indiana number 12 at 13.6 million. Michigan State number 13 at 13 million. Virginia number 14 at 12.78 million. And Tennessee at number 15 at 11.6 million. That is shocking. They're 8th in the SEC among those teams. By the way, of that 11.6 million, don't forget $2 million a year is going to Nico at a bare minimum. Did Tennessee overspend early in the NIL age, and now are they running out? Is their NIL revenue drying up? Look, we know Danny White has done some things to try to add in NIL revenue. Danny White added the talent fee on season tickets for next year. A lot of people didn't like it, but this is the age we're in. There have been a lot of efforts to increase NIL funding for Tennessee, leading to the idea that NIL is not what it needs to be at for Tennessee, honestly. If that's the case, Tennessee's in big trouble. Tennessee's in big trouble because Tennessee, more than any other school trying to compete at a high level, outside of maybe Nebraska, of the blue bloods of college football, that is, needs the NIL revenue. Again, Tennessee is not in a state rich with high school football talent. They can't use the location advantage. Now, NIL outweighs everything at this point, but NIL and a chance to get to the NFL are the top two things, and the second one is based on coaching. So Tennessee needs a lot of ways to neutralize certain advantages. And right now, NIL, there is a question of whether or not Tennessee is getting where it needs to go with NIL. And I don't think we ever would have said this 2 years ago. I don't think anybody ever would have said it. But you really have to ask the question because one of the things that has been written, and as a matter of fact, our friend Marlon McKinney from The Stands wrote an article about this yesterday. He wrote that nobody, as he accurately writes, nobody outside the program can accurately answer the question how much transfer activity is being driven by NIL. But 11.6 million when the top ranked team is 22.3 million and then Ohio State's 20.3 million, Tennessee's got to up its spending, man. Tennessee's got to up its spending. This is an absolute disaster. Tennessee's going to have to spend on the level of those other schools, and maybe that's what they're waiting on. Are they spending too much? Let's throw this out there. Are they spending too much on basketball? Are they spending too much on basketball talent? That's a good question to ask. And if they are, is that, what does that mean for Tennessee long term? This is a problem, guys. This is a real problem. And that could explain why Tennessee has lost so much talent. My theory is still the Boo Carter theory. I think the Josh Heupel offense being figured out theory is a possibility too. This would be third on the list, but I think it's very, very possible NIL is driving the losses. I want to talk about this a little bit more, but first, portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. Also, the show brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Stay tuned, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this very, very soon. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
All right, welcome back to the program. Again, coming out with these NIL figures that Tennessee is trailing in, some of these look very, very disturbing. I mean, Tennessee was trailing Virginia in the ACC, guys. I mean, that's crazy. How are they trailing Virginia? They shouldn't be trailing Clemson. I get it. Trailing Ohio State and Texas is one thing, but you shouldn't be trailing Ohio State and Texas they shouldn't be doubling your NIL spending, which they're doing. It's crazy. We've laughed at Florida's NIL collective. They seem to have gotten it together. That's why they're dominating right now on the recruiting trail. They're having a lot of momentum. We're going to just have to start asking the question, what is going on with the NIL? What is going on with Tennessee and NIL collectives? If Tennessee doesn't get this together, this is going to become a major issue. And honestly, this is why Danny White's having to do his talent fee and his NIL collective, because truth be told, Tennessee's advantage in this era of college football was to go buy players. That's how you do it. And if they're not even doing that, if they're down in the middle of the pack, 8th in the SEC, 15th nationally, how do you expect them to compete? They don't really have the NFL, the pipeline to the NFL to sell the way a lot of other schools do at this moment. Josh Heupel's done a decent job, but it's not like he can outsell Steve Sarkisian on that or a lot of other coaches. So, you can't outsell Ryan Day in Ohio State. Can't outsell, like, he can't out-recruit other coaches of high-profile programs just on NFL talent. There's nothing special about him at that level yet. Then state talent is not where it needs to be. So, again, the only real question becomes, where does Tennessee get an advantage? This is a rumor. We don't have it confirmed. But Brad Crawford of 247 Sports did report it. And so Tennessee is going to have to open the checkbook, honestly. If that's the case, Tennessee is going to have to open the checkbook. I am ranking the most important issues of why I think Tennessee got hit in the transfer portal. First off, I think it's possible. My biggest, outside of the ones that left because they weren't playing, okay, which is you're going to get hit with a lot of those. But the Squirrel White, Mike Matthews one stood out. What happened? Number one, Boo Carter, I think is the most likely. We've already talked about that. Number two, I think there was a concern about this offense that was a magnet for receivers a year ago that no longer is. And I think you can see that with Lincoln Riley losing players. You can see how Jeff Lebby has struggled at Mississippi State. I think there's a belief that the veer and shoot offense has been figured out. And then number three, though, the most likely one would be NIL. It's the only thing I can think of, guys. So Tennessee's going to really have to address this. It's definitely a concern. I really don't think it's a debate at this point. Portions of the program are brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. I'm going to drop the link in the chat down below in 1 second. Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. PeakIVHydration.com. Link is now in the chat down below. Now we're going to get to this day in Tennessee football history. That's right. This day in Tennessee football history, or Tennessee sports history. It's the 30-year anniversary today, guys. It's the 30-year anniversary of the Gator Bowl, in which Tennessee went to the swamp because of construction in Jacksonville to play Virginia Tech in the Gator Bowl, and they blew out the Hokies 45-23. The highlight of the game was Peyton Manning throwing a pass to Joey Kent that Joey Kent made an epic diving catch on. It was a very memorable game, and basically because the real story was Tennessee finishing the year 8-4. If you guys don't remember, Tennessee had lost Heath Shuler from the 93 season. They had a collection of quarterbacks going into 94. The most highly profile, highly touted one was Peyton Manning, where all the hype was behind him, but he was supposed to redshirt. Jerry Colquitt gets hurt in the opener. Todd Helton goes down in week 4. Tennessee is 1-3 by that point. Peyton Manning steps in and guides Tennessee to win 7 of 8 games, closes it out with a dominating win over Virginia Tech to finish the season 8-4. And it set the stage for some gigantic years ahead with Peyton Manning and other recruits Tennessee would get, as Tennessee would go on from 95 to 98 to have its best 4-year run of the modern era. No run has come close. It's the 30-year anniversary of the Gator Bowl. All right. So let's stick with NIL and the transfer portal, because it's the most talked about conversation in college football right now. And it hit, I don't even think it hit fever pitch over the weekend. I'm not so sure fever pitch has reached yet. But with the college football playoff going on, everybody's talking about NIL and the transfer portal. And the peak like craziness of it happened in a bowl game over the weekend, where, as you guys saw, Miami played Iowa State and lost Iowa State 42-41 in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. But what happened in that game? Cam Ward, who was a top 5 draft pick, played in the first half of that game and then sat in the second half of that game. Guys, I don't think it's a secret to anybody that he played in the first half to hit a couple of stat lines. We don't know what, because of an NIL contract he was hit with and he was faced with. Now, and he had to fulfill that NIL contract. And now he's focusing on his NFL draft stock. Again, you either sit out the whole game, focus on the NFL, or you play the whole game. It was crazy that this happened. But this gets to our point with Nick Saban, who was on Pat McAfee last week. And he said, quote, each year it's gotten a little worse, where he speaks of NIL. He said, the first year we had name, image, and likeness. 4 or 5 years ago, we had $3 million and everybody was happy. Then the next year it was 7. Then the next year it's 10. Then this year it's 13. Now they're looking at 20. I mean, where does it end? And the people who are supporting this, they really get no benefit for it. And I'm sure that there's going to be some instances in the future where those people don't want to continue to support players that aren't there. He continues, guys are looking to where I can develop value right now. Guys are looking to where can I develop value right now, and more about what can I get instantly in terms of getting in the portal or going to another school. No one talks about the college experience anymore. Nobody talks about graduation. All these things are probably important to the future. Now, you guys are going to call Nick Saban hypocritical. You're going to say he follows the money. He took all this money when he was a head coach and didn't mind it, and now he's saying players aren't. He took all this money when he was a head coach, and now he's criticizing players not valuing the college experience. I've been critical of Nick Saban's stances on NIL in the past, but here's the truth, guys. He's not wrong at this point. The NIL pendulum has swung dramatically, and it's sending college football into a tailspin, because the truth of the matter is, if this level of NIL is going to decrease interest in college football very, very, very rapidly. The faster it decreases interest in college football, the faster it decreases interest in the players playing college football. And the faster it decreases interest in the players playing college football, the less likely they're going to be able to get any revenue, because less money will be coming in. Won't happen tonight, won't happen tomorrow, won't happen this week, won't happen next month, won't happen next year. But over time, the well's going to dry up. And you can't blame the players. They're doing what anybody would do in this situation. You have to blame the system. But truth be told, the more chaos there is, the more power they've gotten, and they've gotten so much, they're inadvertently going to collapse their own product, at which point they will lose any chance at getting NIL money. Here's the other part about NIL money I want to bring up, guys. And this is the real hard truth about it. Even at Tennessee's level, the vast majority of players get more in scholarship money than they do for their value on the open market. Their scholarship money outweighs what they can make on the open market. It just does. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't deserve to be paid. I felt players should have been paid for a long time. And it was absolutely hypocritical what was happening before. But this is now allowing a system where the top players are going to command all the money, and you're going to destroy the sport for the non-top 60 teams in college football. And at the end of the day, the rest are just going to be thrown by the wayside. Here's one of the flaws we missed with NIL. I thought there was a chance that NIL money was going to kind of create more parity in college football. I thought it was going to spread things out. And I think we saw that this year, that it did. Players were going to different schools for the money. But I think over time, the reverse is going to happen. And I think as it sorts itself out, you are going to see the top schools organized, get their pick of the litter of the top players. At which point that's going to and then they're going to break off, form their own league, and that's going to completely destroy the sport for all the other smaller schools. And all these other thousands and thousands and thousands of players that didn't have any NIL value, but could get a scholarship and a free ride and a free education based on their ability to play football, will lose it because so many football programs had to shut down. This is going to have to be addressed. The problem, if you came into this opposed to paying players because you have some fantasy idea of amateurism, well, then you were always wrong. Amateur athletes was a laughable thing to think about from the start. The notion of student athletes was hilarious. But if you came at this with the idea of let's just open the floodgates. And I kind of was on that line too. You were also wrong. We're seeing it sort itself out now. We didn't know how it would sort itself out, but it is sorting itself out. So there's going to have to be some sort of guardrails. And you guys are saying don't, and many people have said Congress shouldn't get involved. They can't handle stuff like this. Well, the only reason this stuff exists is because Congress got involved. It exists because of the Sherman Antitrust Act from the 1890s, guys. That law is why there are so many NCAA regulations being struck down. So with that, Congress has to get involved. I want to talk a little bit more about this in a second. First, the show is brought to you by TristarHatsCo.com, TristarHatsCo.com.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Welcome back to the program. Speaking of, and talking a little bit about NIL and the way to fix it. See, Nick Saban's proposal, as we talked about Nick Saban commenting on it, was more about contracts and maybe putting players under 2 and 3 year contracts. And I think hopefully the market works itself out and that players do that. But will the other side or the other party be able to fulfill those contracts? See, what I think is actually happening is oftentimes these contracts are being signed. And the party that's signing the contracts is making promises that they can't fulfill on the back end because they want those players for a year to see what type of success they can have that year. And then when they can't fulfill it on the back end, they'll just be like, sorry, we don't have the money. And that player can then go enter the portal. That's what I really think is happening. So these collectives are preying on the players too in that regard. I think that's a big thing of what's happening. So with these contracts, I honestly think that there needs to be severe punishments. Part of this is there needs to be severe punishments for schools and collectives that make promises to players that they can't keep. That's one way to do it. The biggest thing is that Congress and people are just going to have to get involved. And I think the way to fix this is a few things. True NIL contracts negotiated with schools, a salary cap, and this is going to be controversial, a payment floor. Because if you do all this, you're not going to be able to give the players scholarships anymore, probably. So a payment floor where everybody makes a baseline salary. That's how any collective bargaining system works. When collective bargaining happens, the most valuable player, the most valuable employee sacrifices their salary so the rest of the employees can make a little bit more money. LeBron James is vastly underpaid in the NBA. You can hate him or like him, but he's vastly underpaid based on the value he produces for the NBA. So the rest of the NBA players can make a certain amount of money. The same was true with Michael Jordan. If you guys know professional wrestling in the 1980s, Jesse Ventura tried to unionize professional wrestling, and Hulk Hogan ratted Jesse Ventura out to Vince McMahon, snitched on him, and sold out all of his other fellow wrestlers. Why? Hulk Hogan, as the top card, was making way more than he would have made if wrestling were unionized. That's what happens with collective bargaining. So that's probably going to be the case here. You're going to have to see a salary floor and a salary cap for teams, but a certain amount of that money has to be guaranteed to the players, because here's the big issue with salary caps. That's an antitrust violation on its own, unless there's collective bargaining. So I think that's going to have to be the way this all shakes out. But then how do you deal with salary caps? Who's to say that you can't make money off endorsements? See, these collectives, this is basically endorsement money. So this is where Congress is going to have to step in and carve out an antitrust exemption for NCAA athletes when it comes to endorsements. I don't know how, but they're going to have to figure that out. And people way smarter than me can figure out guardrails for this thing, because right now this is not sustainable and it will kill college sports long term. Not the principle of players getting paid, but the fact that the money is going to be concentrated in the hands of top players who can move around at any risk. Everybody else is going to start moving around just for the extra pennies they're going to get, and it will all be trading amongst the top schools eventually, particularly as the SEC and Big Ten eventually break off, and the rest of the schools will be thrown by the wayside because they won't have the money to support a football program. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Say Off the Hook sent you, and go in and say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook sent you. QualityTirePros.com. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how NIL is affecting, and this new transfer portal rule is affecting Tennessee basketball, because there was a big transfer that affected the basketball program last week while we were off. It's a week late now, so we won't talk about that too much, but what we will talk about is Tennessee's depth in the basketball program and how they can maintain a number one ranking with that questionable depth. Stick with us 2 minutes.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. At 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, welcome back to the program. Off the Hook Sports portions of the program are brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. We want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Going to go onto the hardwood now because Tennessee basketball has made some news. The good news is for Vol fans, they're still number one. They're still undefeated, as are the Lady Vols. And assuming they beat Norfolk State Tuesday night, both programs will enter the new year undefeated. The bad news, if you're a Tennessee fan, is they didn't look great against Middle Tennessee last week. The day of, Cameron Carr announced he's entering the transfer portal. Just left the program. I don't know if NIL had something to do with that. It seems like there was a promise made somewhere that wasn't kept, or that was kept, or some sort of tampering that happened. Cameron Carr was 6'6". He was a developing solid player in the rotation. The coaches loved him so much. That's what pushed a lot of last year's wing players into the transfer portal. He got banged up back in November and was set to miss about 4 weeks, or a few weeks heading into SEC play as he healed, but he was going to be fully healthy. And the hope was that once he's fully healthy and Darlington Dubar develops, Tennessee would have enough of a rotation, even with JP Estrella suffering a season-ending injury, to go far in the tournament. Because let me tell you what exactly was the thought of Rick Barnes and company at the beginning of the year. The thought was to be able to go 10 deep with Zakai Ziegler, Jemai Mashak, Chaz Lanier, Igor Milchik Jr., and Felix Opera. Those are the 5 starters. That's a perfect starting lineup, a national title caliber starting lineup. And then the depth to spell that would be Jordan Gainey as a weapon in the backcourt, JP Estrella as a weapon in the post. The top 2 guys off the bench would be those guys. And then Cade Phillips, Cameron Carr, and Darlington Dubar would all get involved too. So he wanted to be able to go 10 deep. JP Estrella goes down with a season-ending injury. No matter. Go 9 deep. Darlington Dubar can operate between the 3 and the 4. If you go 9 deep, you can still go win a national title. But then Cameron Carr entering the transfer portal. Tennessee is only able to go 8 deep right now entering the new year. Not only are they only able to go 8 deep, but Darlington Dubar is still working his way back into the rotation after getting hurt and missing the start of the year due to a personal issue and still trying to pick up the defensive schemes and Rick Barnes' defensive coaching. With that in mind, as of right now, Tennessee enters the new year ranked number 1 and undefeated, and will play Norfolk State going into the new year, only able to go 7 deep. So how do they fix this problem? Well, 1, Darlington Dubar still has to keep developing. That's the most obvious. If you can go 8 deep, it's a lot easier. But the other part is that Bishop Boswell, a 4-star wing that they signed in the offseason who has played some, a freshman, is going to have to get into the rotation and be a part of it. And this is where Rick Barnes is going to have to sacrifice something he believes in heavily. Rick Barnes lives by the system of you earn your playing time. So if I'm forced to go 6 deep because other bench players aren't developing the way they should, then I'll have to go 6 deep, I guess. That's always been his philosophy. And it has undone him in the NCAA tournament. It's what cost him, by the way, when he had Grant Williams and Admiral Sofield and those guys. He refused to go beyond 7 deep because he didn't feel like the other guys were developing enough and deserved to play. It's not that those guys deserve to play or not. It's that your starters deserve some rest. So when you're dominating opponents, or when you're just, even if you're not, if you're just in a game, your starters need some rest at times. Okay? And you can't live and die by the principle of my starters have to, or my players have to earn their playing time. Sometimes you just have to give them the playing time to give your starters a break. And I think Rick Barnes is going to have to do that now, because Tennessee has a national title team, guys. They've got the best team in college basketball with this starting lineup, assuming it all stays healthy. The crucial point is going to be developing the depth behind them to be able to keep the starters fresh when the NCAA tournament comes. I want to talk about more of that in a second. First portions of the program is brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, welcome back to the program. So this has happened a few times with Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes right now only is able to go 7 deep because of 2 losses he didn't expect to suffer. To his credit, he turned right to Cade Phillips when JP Estrella went down. I don't think he planned to play Cade Phillips this many minutes, but Cade Phillips has really stepped up. So Cade Phillips in the post to be able to spell Igor Milchik and Felix Opera. Darlington Dubar will be able to move to the 4 at times. Obviously, Jordan Gainey is the reliable bench guy on the backcourt to come out and be a scorer. You really got to develop Bishop Boswell for 2 reasons. 1, you need a backup point guard. Right now, Zakai Ziegler is really the only guy that can run the point effectively. Bishop Boswell as a combo wing can probably handle those duties and give you a big size advantage in the process if you're able to pull him out or get him into the game more. But beyond that, you just can't waste this year. This is where I said from the start that this year's Tennessee basketball team is better than last year's team. I can't say that up front right now, though, because last year's team was deeper in the end. But again, that's not how this team started. This team did start deeper. It's because so many players are because Cameron Carr left and JP Estrella got hurt. But it's on Rick Barnes if he wants the depth to still be an issue or not. Because, okay, last year's team, I'm just pulling it up. Dalton Connect, Sakai Ziegler, Jonas Adu, Josiah Jordan James, Jordan Gainey, Santiago Vescovi, Toby Walker, and Jemai Mashak. That's 8 players played at least 13 minutes. You want an option to have 9 guys be able to play at least 13 minutes. That's the real goal. And you don't want anybody playing upwards of 35 minutes. That's the real goal in this. What's Tennessee dealing with right now, though? They're okay so far. Zakai Ziegler is playing the most minutes at 33. Jemai Mashak's number 2 at 30. Chaz Lanier at 28.6. But if you don't start getting Bishop Boswell out there more to develop him in big games, then you're going to see those minutes go up. You're going to see Chaz Lanier at 35 minutes. Jemai Mashak pushing 35 minutes, Zakai Ziegler at 35 minutes, and that's going to be a problem, guys. And now you may say, well, if Tennessee went 8 deep last year, they could go 8 deep this year, the same thing, but it's not actually going to be the same thing because to go deeper into their bench this year, beyond Bishop Boswell, they'll have to go into guys who are not scholarship players like Grant Hurst. They don't want to have to do that. So they really got to get Bishop Boswell out there. He's shown some signs. He's shown some flashes. Rick Barnes is going to have to up his minutes from 4 per game to probably 10, 11. Again, he's 6'4", 203 pounds. So he should be able to run the point guard sets, and he is a tough defender, which Rick Barnes loves. I think Rick Barnes should sacrifice his philosophy of you just earn playing time. I think Bishop Boswell has got to be worked into the rotation. But do you guys think, and this is an honest question, do you guys think Tennessee is deep enough, as currently constructed, to win a natty in the NCAA tournament? They have 9 scholarship guys at this moment, with Cameron Carr transferring and JP Estrella out for the year. They only have 9 scholarship guys. Is that deep enough to win a national title in the NCAA tournament? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. And so I think that's where this issue is going to come into play, because I think Tennessee is one, you can't bank on everybody else staying healthy. What if somebody else gets hurt? And on top of that, I don't think Rick Barnes will have the gumption to go deep into his rotation the way he should. Now, Darlington Dubar is averaging 11.9 minutes per game now, which is good news for Tennessee. But that number needs to go up to 15 to 16 to maybe even 20. Okay. So again, are they deep enough? I really don't know. We'll obviously not see much from them Tuesday when they play Norfolk State, but I will tell you that Norfolk State has a winning record, and we'll see how much Rick Barnes is willing to use his bench and blow out wins, because again, he's big on you earn playing time in meaningful minutes. So if it's like the first half and Tennessee's up by 15, will he use his bench then? Time will tell. We don't know for sure, but what I do know and what I will say is that at this moment, Tennessee, they got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of work to do to shore up that depth, and I'm not so sure Rick Barnes is willing to do it. And if he doesn't, then he will go into H71 without a national title, because he's got the team to do it this year. He's got the team to do it. He just has to be willing to use his bench. I get not using your walk-ons, but Bishop Boswell should be able to play in a rotation now as a true freshman 4-star guard. He should. So that's the real big deal in this one. So I think Bishop Boswell is the guy you need to go to. And if you don't go to him, you're going to have some major issues going forward, because truth be told, you won't be able to always go 8 deep. And again, those extra like 3 minutes that those backup guys play a lot of times beyond your 8 deep rotation, that's what keeps your starters from logging 35 minutes a game. And you have to make sure that they don't log 35 minutes a game. Zakai Ziegler is already pushing it at 33 minutes a game. And Zakai Ziegler's 33 minutes is like 40 minutes for other players, because he plays at 100% effort all the time. Okay. He goes wall to wall 100. So that's a big deal. I think that more than anything, too, develop Bishop Boswell. So if you do have another injury before the NCAA tournament, you can still go 8 deep. So it's just crucial to develop Bishop Boswell. Everything comes down to Rick Barnes willing to use Bishop Boswell and develop him. That will determine if Tennessee is deep enough to go into the NCAA tournament. Portions of the program are brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, www.facebook.com/sports treasurestn, facebook.com/sports treasurestn. Also brought to you by Ray Varner Ford, local you trust, innovation you can't afford, rayvarnerford.com, and Nationals Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. NFC1.com, NFC1.com. And Brainerd Golf Course and Brown Acres Golf Course, Golf Chattanooga's best public courses. Tee times available. Just click secure.east.profitservices.com. Link is down below. Let's get to the stat of the day. The stat of the day is really a fact of the day, but it's kind of interesting. Tennessee lost. The last time Tennessee had the SEC Player of the Year, because they had Dylan Sampson as their SEC Player of the Year. The last time Tennessee had the SEC Player of the Year, they lost their postseason game 42-17. That SEC Player of the Year was severely hurt in that postseason game and couldn't really play. That SEC Player of the Year was gone the next year. They opened the next year against Syracuse. They went on to win the national title. Guess what? That SEC Player of the Year was Peyton Manning. The parallels between 2024 and 1997, guys, are insane. Tennessee. In 97, Peyton Manning was the SEC Player of the Year. He was severely hurt for their Orange Bowl game against Nebraska. Well, let's back up. Peyton Manning was the SEC Player of the Year. Tennessee was in the running for the national championship. They played Nebraska in the Orange Bowl, and Peyton Manning was severely banged up. He started the game, he couldn't finish the game, and Tennessee lost 42-17. The next year, after losing Peyton Manning, Tennessee opened the season against Syracuse, won, and went on to win the national title. What's happening this year, 2024? Dylan Sampson was Tennessee's SEC Player of the Year. Tennessee was in the national championship running in their postseason game against Ohio State. Dylan Sampson started the game, got banged up, couldn't finish the game. Tennessee lost 42-17, just like 97. Tennessee set to open the 2025 season against Syracuse away from home. And Dylan Sampson is gone. Deja vu. Deja vu. Just having a little fun with you guys. Because it's kind of intriguing that that's how that's working out. That is your stat of the day, brought to you by Joe Neubert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeubertCollision.com, www.joeneubertcollision.com. That's JoeNaubert, JoeNeubertCollision.com. All right, let's talk a little college football playoff action, shall we? Tennessee's not in it, but they're still amidst the transfer portal and the NIL chaos and things happening with the NFL and college basketball season. Guys, did y'all know that the second round of the college football playoff, the quarterfinals of the college football playoff, are about to start? They start this week on New Year's Eve. Penn State plays Boise State. And then on Wednesday, Texas plays Arizona State. Well, Penn State plays Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And then on Wednesday, Texas plays Arizona State at 1 in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Ohio State plays Oregon in the Rose Bowl at 5. And Notre Dame plays Georgia at 8:45 in the All-State Sugar Bowl. I will say this. I have some criticisms of the college football playoff that I will get to. But this is what college football is about. New Year's Eve game with national title implications, and then dominating New Year's Day games with national title implications. This is the best part about the playoff and how it should have been from the start. This is the one part that you got to love if you're a college football fan. So let's get rolling. What does this all mean? All right, let's get to talking. The first round was a disappointment. 4 blowout games. It showed how much home field advantage matters. It shows how the format is flawed. Doesn't really show that the wrong teams got in. It just shows how the format is flawed. Will things be different in the second round of the college football playoff? I'm going to go through these games, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts on whether or not they'll be different, because I think they will. Now, Vegas thinks Notre Dame, Georgia is going to be the closest game. They think Notre Dame, Georgia, they have Georgia favored by 1.5 points in the Sugar Bowl. They think the only other close game, though, will be Ohio State, Oregon, and they have Ohio State favored by 2.5 in that game. Penn State and Boise State, Penn State's favored by 11, and Texas and Arizona State, Texas is favored by 13. So, with all that in mind, are there any chances of an upset in this round? Can there be any good games? I'm going to go ahead and give my analysis right now on all of these games. So, I'm going to say this right up front. Throw out the Texas-Arizona State game, guys. I'm sorry. I don't think Arizona State has a chance. It's the predicted blowout of blowouts of the 4. And I think that is the accurate call. Texas is significantly better than Arizona State. Arizona State had no business getting a first-round bye, honestly, and I don't care that Texas has played. I think Texas is going to absolutely obliterate Arizona State. That 13-point spread is too low as it is, honestly. I think Texas is going to cover easily. They're going to dominate. If you guys know this, Arizona State's best win is at home against BYU. They won that game 20-23. Now, they did beat Iowa State 45-19 later in the year, which is probably the most impressive look for them. But honestly, I think Iowa State might have been significantly overrated this year. Arizona State is getting hot down the stretch of the season. They haven't beaten anybody significant enough, though, for anybody to think that they could beat Texas. Okay, I think Texas is going to absolutely, just saying this up front, they're going to beat the brakes off Arizona State. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be humiliating, guys. And it'll be the 1 p.m. game, and it'll be the worst way to start off New Year's Day, because college football playoff is supposed to own New Year's Day, and they're going to own it in the afternoon when everybody's watching, with Texas absolutely dominating. And I mean dominating. I'm not lying here, guys. Dominating Arizona State. I'm telling you, it's going to be ugly. And I think Texas is overrated. They played an easy schedule. I don't really care. I think that they have way more talent than Arizona State, and this won't be pretty. All right, so let's go on to the other games. I'm sounding like an SEC homer here, guys, and I'm really not trying to, honestly. But Notre Dame, Georgia, Vegas is dead wrong on this. They think this is going to be the closest game of the year, of the weekend, or of the second round. No, it's not. No, it's not. Notre Dame's best win is the opener at against the Texas A&M Aggies team that was breaking in a new head coach, and the next week they lost to Northern Illinois. Who have they beaten since then? Honestly, guys, they haven't beaten anybody that good. Okay? You can tout Indiana. We realized Indiana was frauds. Indiana beat one team with a winning record this year. That team had 7 wins, okay? And that was Michigan. They played Ohio State, got blown out. They played Notre Dame, and they lost. I'm sorry. I think Georgia's absolutely going to obliterate Notre Dame. Georgia got the rest. I don't know how valuable that's going to be, but I think Georgia is going to absolutely destroy Notre Dame. It's not going to be pretty. Again, that's going to be humiliating. Put all your money. Do a parlay on Texas and Georgia covering, honestly. I don't even realize how people think. How does Vegas think this game is going to be close? A 1.5 point spread? No, not happening. One, people are forgetting. I think that Notre Dame is... Their best win, I would probably say, is Army, and they did win that 49-14. And Notre Dame has looked good in all of their wins. They've looked pretty. I'm not going to pretend they haven't, but they still lost to Northern Illinois at the beginning of the year. And Notre Dame slips up when it matters most. Who could trust them in big games? I'm sorry. I think Georgia's going to absolutely blow out Notre Dame. That one's going to be embarrassing too, to be truth be told. So, what about the other 2 games? Penn State, Boise State. Here we go, guys. This might be the most fun game of the entire college football playoff. Now, I'm going to talk in a little while about why I disagree with the expanded college football playoff. And this is where Josh Pate and I align. But Josh Pate and I don't fully align. Josh Pate thinks the point of a playoff is to crown a champion. That is the ultimate goal. But I think a playoff that has a fun journey with it is still fine. I think the journey can be fine. College basketball, the journey of the NCAA tournament is fun because of the Cinderellas. I don't want college football to be college basketball because I want the regular season to matter, and that's my issue with the expanded playoff. But the journey of the college football playoff is still fine, and it's still fun, and it can still generate ratings. Why do I say that? Boise State has no shot of winning the national title. None. They're not going to do it. They don't have a chance in hell. But do they have a chance of beating an elite team in a one-game setting when they've had rest? Yes, they do. That is the situation we're dealing with Boise State and Penn State. One, the Fiesta Bowl is out west. In Arizona, there's more sympathy for these type of lesser teams out west. If you guys don't know, the Fiesta Bowl was created because the old Western conferences, like the Mountain West back in the 70s, didn't believe that they were getting enough feature love in bowl games. That's how the bowl was created to begin with. So it's perfectly positioned for Boise State. One of the most memorable wins of all time that really pushed mid-majors into the forefront was Boise State upsetting Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl in 2006. On top of that, Boise State, don't forget this. Now, again, they could not go through the grind of a Big Ten schedule. They would not be able to, okay, unless it was Indiana's version of the Big Ten schedule. They wouldn't be able to handle Penn State's Big Ten schedule. But they did play Oregon on the road extremely tough at the beginning of the year, only losing 37-34. And that was in Oregon. They played Oregon as tough as Ohio State played Oregon, honestly. And they won every other game on the year. Boise State, with the amount of rest they had, can absolutely beat Penn State. So I think this spread is way too large, honestly. I think Penn State, while I think is better than Boise State, has a tendency to choke in big games. I think they might be feeling themselves just a little bit for a first-round college football playoff win over a overrated SMU team. And while they did put up a fight against Oregon too, they didn't put up the same fight Boise State put up, and they did it in a neutral field, whereas Boise State did it at Oregon, where the fight was, and Penn State's also lost to Ohio State. Penn State typically does hit pars under James Franklin. So I think you may want to pick them to win, but I don't think you – put it this way. I don't think they cover. This is a Penn State team that needed overtime to beat USC. This is a Penn State team that only beat Bowling Green by a touchdown. This is a Penn State team that lost 26-25 to Arizona on the road, okay? I'm telling you guys, Penn State is going to struggle. I actually think Boise State might actually cover this game. So if you're following me now, Texas, Arizona State, Texas covers easily. Georgia, Notre Dame, Georgia covers easily. Do an alternate spread of like 10 points of that one. Penn State, Boise State, I think Boise State covers. And I'm not so sure Boise State doesn't pull off the upset in that one. And finally, let's have a little fun with Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State's 2.5-point favorites in this game. They should have beaten Oregon when they went to Oregon back in October when Oregon beat them 32-31. Ohio State was the better team if you watched it start to finish, guys. And Oregon won 32-31. Ohio State should have won that game. So on print, I think this could be the best game of the bunch, though. This looks like it'll be the best game of the bunch. Although, again, Penn State, I think Penn State, Boise State will be the most exciting game of the bunch because I think Boise State's going to put up a fight. But the most sure bet to be a close game is Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State is 2.5-point favorites. I get it. It's a neutral field. They barely lost to Oregon at Oregon earlier in the season. Something about me feels like Oregon's going to win, though. Even though Ohio State may be the better team. I think Ohio State pulled out all their stops against Tennessee because their backs were against the wall with the Ryan Day talk. They wanted to come out and send a message for Ryan Day, and I think they made sure that they were going to break Tennessee's will early. But I don't know if they have it in them to do that 2 games in a row. And I think Oregon actually has it in them to beat Ohio State again at the Rose Bowl, particularly since Oregon already beat them, is undefeated as number 1, and is the underdogs in this game. So I actually think Oregon could end up winning this game. And I think conventional wisdom says the exact opposite. So Kyle said Penn State's 2 losses were Ohio State and Oregon, not Arizona. Did I say their losses were to Arizona? I don't think I said that. Maybe I made a mistake on that. But I think I was talking about the Fiesta Bowl being in Arizona. Which favors Mountain West teams. But anyways, the Ohio State Oregon is the toughest one for me to call. It's the biggest toss-up one, honestly. The other 3 I think are relatively easy. I think Texas is an easy cover against Arizona State. Georgia's an easy cover against Notre Dame. And I think Boise State's an easy cover against Penn State. Honestly, I think Boise State keeps this game within a touchdown and may even pull off the upset. Ohio State, Oregon could go any which way. Ohio State has the better talent. They could win in a blowout. Oregon could be taking it personal. Ohio State could have expended too much energy beating Tennessee the way they did. So Oregon could win in a blowout. This could go either way. But Oregon, Ohio State's the most unpredictable. Penn State, Boise State, your best bet at a lower seeded team making a run. Texas and Georgia are locks to win. That's the way the college football playoff is going to work this year. And bank on it. Bank on it. Penn State, Oregon. I'm sorry, bank on it. Penn State, Boise State will be the most exciting, surprising college football playoff game on New Year's Eve.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial
Bank on it brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better, cbtn.com, Commercial Bank. All right, so yes, I think Boise State, Penn State's going to be the most exciting game that Friday evening. I was looking at it through, and again, guys, have y'all seen Boise State in the fight they gave Arizona? Have you seen how Penn State has struggled in big games throughout this year? Also, we have to point out that, like, Penn State, if I'm not mistaken, well, no, they have been tested pretty well. They've been relatively tested. They played Illinois, and they beat them by 2 touchdowns. But, again, away from home is very suspect. Again, needing overtime to beat USC, I'm just thinking, I mean, beating Arizona by just 1 point on the road, I'm just really thinking, guys, that Penn State is going to struggle with Boise State. And if you really want to make some money, why don't you go with maybe Boise State to win that game? I'm thinking I'm going to let the message board decide. I don't have a gambling problem at all, but I'm doing a parlay on this one. I'm doing a 4-game parlay. I'm going to try to pick all 4 spreads. I've got Texas covering the 13-point spread, Georgia covering the 1.5-point spread. I've got, and then the Penn State, Boise State, and Ohio State, Oregon games are the toughest ones to me. I think I'm going to have Oregon cover the 2.5. They're 2.5-point underdogs. I think Oregon is going to cover that. And the question is, do I go big or go home and pick Penn State to win outright against, pick Boise State to win outright against Penn State? What do you guys think? Big or go home? Boise State to cover or Boise State to win? Should I go Boise State to cover or Boise State to win? I think we're really sleeping on Boise State. And here's the problem, guys. Here's the real issue. I think Boise State could win. And then all the college football playoff expansion fans are going to be like, see, Cinderella's can happen in college football. The college football playoff had a Cinderella. Not realizing Boise State has a rare talent at running back. They still have no shot of winning it all. And we always said they could win 1 game, okay? That doesn't really make it worth devaluing the regular season the way it was devalued, even though I do enjoy, if you're going to have a playoff, I do enjoy the process more than I do the end result. But I'm just waiting on somebody to do that, okay? I think I'm going to play it safe. I'm already parlaying it. So I think I'm going to say Boise State covers. I'm a little bit nervous of saying Boise State wins outright. So I'm going to go Boise State plus 11. So my calls are this. I'm making them official. Texas minus 13. Boise State plus 11. Texas minus 13. Oregon plus 2.5. Georgia minus 1.5. Those are my calls for the quarterfinals of the college football playoff in the Fiesta Bowl, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the All-State Sugar Bowl. For those who don't remember, the winner of these games are going to play each other on Thursday, January the 9th in the Orange Bowl, and Friday, January the 10th in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. And then, of course, the national championship will be on Monday, January the 20th. But, yep, just to recap one more time, I got Penn State plus 11, Texas minus 13, Oregon plus 2.5, and Georgia minus 1.5. Those are my calls for the college football playoff. Those calls brought to you by the UPS Store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The UPSstore.com at 10629 Hardin Valley Road. That's right, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. I'm telling you guys, don't sleep on Boise State. Don't sleep on them in this game. You can hate mid-majors all you want. You can agree with me that they don't have a real shot of winning it all. But in a setting like this, with the right matchup on a Friday night I'm sorry, not on a Friday night, on a New Year's Eve night, they have a great chance of keeping this game close, particularly with their running game. So don't sleep on Boise State. Boise State, Penn State is the most must-watch game of these four in the college football playoff, even though neither team has a shot at winning at all. Again, it's about the journey and the process and the fun more than it is about that. All right, stick with us. In 2 minutes, we're going to talk a little more college football playoff because I got some victory laps to take with you guys to talk about how this expanded playoff ended up being proven to be stupid and didn't work out the way people wanted to. So why don't you just stick with me for 2 minutes, and we're going to talk, and I'm going to troll you guys to prove that college football never should have expanded its playoff. We'll be right back to talk about that. Again,
now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 Cargo Van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Welcome back to the program. Portions of the program are brought to you by Work Trucks. Before we get going to discuss the college football playoff, Work Trucks, we're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's Work Trucks. Work Trucks is intent on offering the perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and can get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. Worktrucksllc.com with an X, by the way. Why risk changing your future and business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. That's right. It's WORKTRUX. Work Trucks will also work to make sure you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find the perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. WorkTrucksLLC.com proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. And now we have reached the last look, brought to you by Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. AsiaCafe.org. The last look is going to be about TV ratings. The college football playoff TV ratings for the first round were an utter and unmitigated disaster. Anybody that tells you otherwise is lying to you, okay? They were a disaster. Just to break these down real quick, the first round scored an average of 10.6 million viewers. To its credit, that's higher than the 2023-24 non-semifinal New Year's Six bowl games and this year's A4 conference championship games, except for the SEC. The SEC outdrew the SEC title game. That was meaningless, by the way, outdrew the college football playoff TV ratings, okay? It was a disaster. The noon game between Penn State and SMU drew 6.4 million viewers. The 4 p.m. game between Texas and Clemson drew 8.6 million. The Friday night game between Notre Dame and Indiana drew 13.4 million. And then the Saturday night game between Tennessee and Ohio State, which had the 2 biggest programs in terms of supporting fan bases, drew 14.3 million. Both of those, to be fair, benefited from being in prime time. A couple other stats for you. The NFL regular season ratings, they outrated the college football playoff ratings. This comes on the heels of Tennessee, of the college football playoff ticket prices collapsing. Okay? I mean, collapsing, except for Notre Dame and Indiana, ahead of the games. So ticket prices to go to the games were cheaper than the ReliaQuest Bowl between Alabama and Michigan, with the exception of Notre Dame, Indiana. The games themselves were outrated by meaningless conference championship games, which themselves have been devalued because of what's happening. Now, you can say up front that these ratings are because the games were so bad and they just need to reseed them. I'm not buying that. Okay? The highest rated game was Tennessee-Ohio State. That was based on the fan bases because Tennessee and Ohio State had the 2 most loyal fan bases of the crew outside of maybe Notre Dame and Penn State and Texas in the first round. But like that was the one with 2 blue bloods. That was the highest rated game, and that was one of the worst games. Okay. Notre Dame and Indiana drew well the night before. That's probably the only college football first round playoff game you could call a success because ticket prices collapsed for every other game, but they went way up for Notre Dame, Indiana, and that game was rated the second highest on a Friday night of all 4 games. It was an embarrassment for the playoff committee for Tennessee fans to fill up Ohio Stadium. That's not what they wanted to see. Even if it makes Tennessee fans look good, you didn't want to see that if you're the college football playoff committee because you wanted to emphasize home field advantage and the value and the excitement of playing games on campus in the first round. So with the ticket prices collapsing, that was happening before anybody knew these games were going to be disasters. Then the games themselves were blowouts. Here's where this all gets a little wild. Certain regular season games outrated the college football playoff this year, most notably Georgia-Alabama, the highest rated regular season game since 2017. Guys, that's a sugar high. I'm telling you guys right now, up front, that is a gigantic sugar high that will come home and come crashing down. Because in the future, the college football playoff, the expanded playoff, is going to collapse TV ratings. TV ratings will, in the regular season, that is. It will be treated just like college basketball, just like the NBA, which you can see right now is crying because of its lack of ratings, okay? It's going to destroy regular season TV ratings when people realize how this thing actually plays out. And now, why is that? Your guys can come at me with the NFL and the regular season in the NFL. I've told you guys this 1,000 times. The NFL breeds parity. They live, eat, and breathe it. So if you have a playoff team or a playoff caliber team, you know if your team gets in, you got a shot at winning the Super Bowl. It never has and never will be like that in college football. There are too many gaps. We just talked about NIL and the transfer portal. I don't even think the NIL and transfer portal era is going to lessen the gap. I think it's going to eventually increase it once certain teams figure things out. So you guys are going to talk to me about the regular season with, oh, look at all these teams like Arizona State fans are going to watch Arizona State play down the stretch and they wouldn't before because now they can go play for a national championship. But Arizona State's never going to be good enough to go play for a national championship. Boise State will never be good enough to play for a national championship. SMU will never be good enough to play for a national championship. And once they realize that, once their fan bases realize that, which will be in about roughly 4 to 5 years, they'll stop caring about these November regular season games for a chance to go to a playoff because they know their team will get blown out either in the first or second game they play. Now, I know I just told you guys Boise State has a chance in this one. They're not going to have a chance to do it twice. They'll have a chance to do it once. When you do that, then you put all the emphasis on the 2 and 3 loss SEC teams hoping to get in. But you do that at the sacrifice in the regular season of the top 10 and top 5 matchups in which the college football world stopped for back in the day, okay? From roughly 1936 when the AP poll began to 2013, the last year of the BCS, a top 5 college football matchup stopped the world. Everybody descended on that. You sacrificed all of that excitement that lasts from September through November for an extra week of fun the weekend before Christmas when people aren't paying attention that much. And by the way, it's not going to get better if you reseed teams. It's not, yes, you'll probably get the Tennessee Ohio State ratings. That's not the ratings they want, guys. And the ticket prices for that game collapsed, okay? These games are right before Christmas. People are busy doing other things. They're not going to set aside time to watch the college football playoff like that, okay? You should have. You opened this can of worms with the 4-team playoff. We knew expansion was coming, and it never should have come. I'm going to tell you what really should have happened. I'm going to tell you the way college football could have been perfect. Buckle up. Go back to the old system where the conferences that were 8 to 12 teams between the Pac-12, ACC, SEC, Big Ten. Maybe get it to where they're all 12 teams. Have a conference championship weekend. Fine with that. Then just do the bowl games. Have the bowl tie-ins. Don't even do the BCS. Just have the Pac-12 champion and Big Ten champion automatically go to the Rose Bowl, the SEC champion in the Sugar Bowl, the ACC champion in the Orange Bowl. Heck, bring back the old Big East and put that champion in the Orange Bowl too. Then have a couple of wild cards, throw them in. Play the bowl games as is. And then just re-rank the teams after the bowl games and do a 1 and 2. Boom. Problem solved. You have a +1. You don't even need a playoff. You have a +1. I've been calling for that for years, guys. For years. Just have a +1 system. And that would have solved the problem because there was never more than 3 teams. In the old BCS, you never had more than 1 team complain about being left out at the end of the year. It was never more than 1. So I maintain that would have been the way to make college football perfect. This whole philosophy of, what about extra games in December? Why are you sacrificing December games? Well, we just found out why you're sacrificing December games, because nobody was watching them and nobody was going to them. Okay, these ratings are terrible. And you sacrifice and you sacrifice the excitement and the joy and the thrill of the regular season for that extra weekend of games. That wasn't worth it. I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was stupid. And this is the problem with college football and the idea of expansion, and it was a failure. Steve Sullivan, you say no money in it, Caleb. I get your point. There's no money in it for the current executives, but the money that is to be gained by this expanded playoff will long-term be lost, because what's going to happen is the lack of intrigue in the regular season is going to devalue the sport and make it impossible to bring in new fans. They sacrifice the long-term health of the sport. I keep going to NASCAR. Dave's right. NASCAR, he's not on right now, but I'm going to steel man his argument real quick, to be fair. He points out NASCAR made a lot of other mistakes. Okay, they had, the whole uniform driving thing. They took a lot of the personalities out of NASCAR. But the thing you can trace it to the most is the Chase Cup. NASCAR was the fastest growing sport in America in 2003. And in 2004, they decided to do the Chase Cup, where they would give the ultimate Chase Sprint trophy that they give at the end of every year. Used to be to just the driver who was best throughout all the races during the year, had the best numbers. They decided, let's create a playoff out of it that starts in September and goes through November. And we're going to compete with the NFL on Sundays. They didn't compete with the NFL. They didn't. Okay. So that wasn't drawing any ratings. And they devalued all of their summer races and all of their winter and spring races. That was the height of when people watched NASCAR. People loved going to the summer races. The Daytona 500 was its own event. It was a perfect time because it started right after the Super Bowl. Everybody was ready to watch it. And they devalued all of that because you watch those races now, or you go to those races now and you're like, oh, it's not really a Chase Cup playoff race. But the problem is Chase Cup series does not compete with the NFL. So they didn't increase the excitement in November and October and September the way they hoped. They just devalued the rest of the way. That's what college football just did with the expanded playoff. They devalued September through November to increase excitement for 1 week, and they didn't increase it enough. And they are going to pay for that long term. And I was right. It's been proven right. Right now, it's still a sugar high. They're still ignoring it because of the fact that the regular season games were rated more highly than ever before. That's a sugar high. It will not last, okay? Eventually, the regular season ratings will collapse. And Michigan, Ohio State will turn into your average random Duke UNC basketball game. Alabama and Auburn will turn into your average random Kansas and Texas game. I don't know, in basketball, something like that, okay? They have Indiana and Michigan State. They have absolutely destroyed long-term what made college football so special, which was those 3 months, Saturdays in the fall. It's not Saturdays in the winter. It's Saturdays in the fall. That's when college football is loved, okay? And they made this mistake, and they will suffer the long-term consequences. And unfortunately, the people responsible for doing this won't suffer any, because they'll be long dead and retired or whatever, and they will have cashed out their paychecks, and they don't care. But I'm warning you guys, this is where it's going, and I blame the mob for pushing for it because it was a gigantic mistake from the start. So that's my soapbox, all right? Thank you guys for tuning in today. Again, Dave Hooker was off. Thanks for bearing with our flexible, non-consistent schedule during the holidays. It is the holidays, and Tennessee is no longer playing. That's why we decided to do that. A heads up, we will not be on tomorrow, and we will not be on Wednesday. So we will be back on Thursday, okay? Our next show is Thursday. No show Tuesday, no show Wednesday. We will have a show Thursday and Friday, and then back to our regular routine next week. But thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Again, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, tell a friend, turn your notifications on, ring the bell. We're building something great here at Off the Hook Sports. And as the new year draws to a close, we came up short of 8,000 subscribers, but we're going to get there, guys. We're almost there. We're still pushing, okay? So please tell a friend. A lot of fun stuff is happening now. Again, we will be off Tuesday and Wednesday, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Be back on Thursday, and then starting next week on a regular schedule whenever we do come on a regular schedule. Remember, we're on weekdays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. And with Caleb Calhoun, this has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.